Yeah, we always have an odd one in the crowd.
So it's kind of odd.
Decidedly odd.
Doesn't that strike you as a little bit odd?
No, that doesn't strike me as a little bit odd.
It's the Bob and Sheri Oddcast, with stuff we wouldn't, couldn't, or shouldn't do on the regular show. Now, here's the Oddcast.
So every year, not every year, every other year, and sometimes every third year, but usually every other year, I get together with childhood friends of mine, those who are available, still live in the continental United States, and we get together at my friend Mike's house in New Haven, Connecticut. And I try to do something different every year. Like there might be a certain restaurant that my friend Jeff Fox, who used to live there, told me about, like the place where they cook lobsters and clams on open flames, and you sit on like a stump and you eat, on a wooden, very rough-hewn table.
Yeah,
it's outdoors. I did that one year, and this year, one year I went on a little drive through Hamden, Connecticut, which is actually where I was born. I mean, I was born in New Haven, Yale New Haven Hospital, but the town we lived in, where I was taken as an infant, was in Hamden. And my mother and father got married at St. Rita's Church in Hamden. And I've combed Hamden. The Glenwood Drive-In that I talk about is there, and I always get a hot dog there. And I found the World War II memorial that they have in Hamden with my father's name and his brother's George's name up there. That was very moving. And I think I'm going to go inside St. Rita's Church and see where my mother and father got married.
Have you never been?
If I went, I was probably so very young, because we moved from that house I was talking about to the next town over, North Haven, when I was probably around 4. So I really wouldn't have much recollection of going to services at 3 in
right.
St. Rita's Church, and maybe I never have been in there before. I drove by it every week on a bus going to meet my friends in downtown. I'd say, oh, yeah, there's St. Rita's. And I never went in, because when you're 16, or when you're 12, 15, 16 years old, we don't care.
Not only do you not care, but you really cannot conceive of your parents as human people.
No, that's right.
It's hard for you to imagine there was a life before you existed.
Right.
That they were ever like goofy or giddy or romantic.
Right.
Olivia said Olivia and I were driving home from my niece Brittany's house the other night, and she asked me something, and I said, "Oh my God, that was when I first was with Kevin. We really didn't even know each other all that well." And Olivia goes, "I can't imagine a time when you and Kevin didn't know each other," because she doesn't remember.
Isn't
she was
that
so
something?
young.
Yeah.
She goes, "How is it that once upon a time you were strangers?" Well, because you don't think of your parents as people.
Well, I know exactly what you mean, because Hampton now never brings up the house that they lived in prior to me. This is the house that
he doesn't
it's
probably
his house.
remember it.
No,
really.
because it's been 8 years, right? This summer. So I want to go and see inside that house, and this little church. This little section is such a rich part of my childhood imagination, because across the street. Literally across the street from St. Rita's is where Shei, my grandmother, lived after her husband Pops died.
Wow.
She moved into a small apartment right across the street. Next to the church is a movie theater where we would go on Saturdays and throw candy at each other and misbehave.
Is it still there?
I think it's still there. And then they would stop the movie in the middle of the movie, and a grumpy manager would come down and walk down to the front of the theater and say, "I'm going to turn this off permanently if you kids don't stop it. You don't throw things, you're animals." And everybody would giggle, and he'd go back. That's right there, too. And the Spring Glen hardware store. That's what it was called. Spring Glen was a part of Hamden. And they had nice little starter houses and some bigger houses, but it was a charming little area. I went by it about 3 years ago, and it just shocked me that the same sign in the same colors, and it's faded because they haven't repainted it, has been there all these years. It's still a hardware store.
Towns that have been bypassed by progress,
right?
Towns that really are not where jobs are coming are time capsules in that way.
But this is not an area that's falling apart.
No, but you understand what I'm saying. There's a time capsule quality to that.
Right. A lot of New England, they just don't want to touch. People don't want to touch. They don't want it changed.
The city where we live now, I dare not leave my house for more than 3 days because they'll knock it down and put a Bruegger's in there.
No, you're exactly right. This Spring Glen Hardware was a magical place. My mother would take me in there when she needed to get something. It was like a 5 and dime, but it was also a hardware store. You get hammers and all that stuff. And they had toys. They had nice toys, like little police cars, but they were made out of metal.
Yeah, rich people toys.
Rich people toys. And I'd go there and just look. And this is the place I think I told you about where I took the trip to Mars.
Yeah. That was so disappointing and sad.
They made a rocket ship. And it was right in the hardware store. And it said, trip to Mars, 5 cents. Can I go to Mars, Mommy? I want to go to Mars. All right. And the guy would open the top up. And you'd climb in and put your head up like in the front of the capsule. And your feet are in the back. You're kind of kneeling. And then he'd close it. And it went completely dark. And then I'm going to Mars. And then he'd shake it for about 3 or 4 minutes. And you're going, all right, I guess I'm on my way. And then the shaking would stop and it would open up. I'd look at the guy and he'd say, how is Mars?
A fucking ripoff. That's how Mars was. I think we just landed at the root of your cynical suspicion of everything.
You know, you could be right.
How can you ask a man to like pie when he got fucked on a trip to Mars?
You're exactly right. Damn you, Spring Glen Hardware. You hurt a man's psyche. Sent him on a very negative path.
I'd like to go back and get that guy. Looky here. I've had to live with this every working day of my adult life. Oh, I don't like pie. Oh, I don't like this. I'm suspicious of that. And you know why? Because of that stupid ass trip to Mars that you lied about.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. So Kevin and I just had the anniversary of our first date. So I was thinking about that and remembering, like, okay, what was it like? Because now we've been together forever, and I feel like we just, we know each other so well. But once upon a time, he was a stranger to me, and there was a distinct possibility in my mind that he would ritually murder me and leave me dismembered in the woods, because that's how I view all.
You bring in one more cat and that could happen still. You
go out with a man that you don't understand, because you're men. You don't know what it's like to be a woman in this world. You go out with a man and you're kind of taking your chances. I'm in his car. I don't really know this part of the world, and at any moment he could put on like some sort of ski mask, and now it's an episode of Dateline. So we've been seeing each other for about a month, and that's not very long at all. I mean, we were strangers, and now suddenly we're seeing each other.
Right.
And he invites me to go away to the weekend. His family had this house that they'd had since he was a kid on a lake in northern Georgia. And I'd never been to that part of Georgia, and he invited me to go away for the weekend. And so on the one hand, it's like, oh, this will be fun. And on the other hand, it's a man. Oh, and it was near Tallulah Gorge where Deliverance was filmed. Here's a man who I don't really know very well, who's inviting me to come to an isolated cabin that has very poor to no cell reception, and also no one can hear me scream. And so I had to really weigh that out without saying to him, hey, this invitation, are you going to try to ritualistically murder me? Because some people can't really handle a question like that.
I was going to say, how'd you bring that up?
And they get all like, well, you're a crazy bitch. And then they never call you again. So it makes dating was difficult for me. So I decided I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to go away with this sexy, hot man. And I'm just going to have to hope that I can outrun him, or that, I can in some way turn the weapon back on him in case he tries to ritualistically slaughter me.
Sounds like you're setting up for a great weekend.
He, of course, has no idea that this is what I'm thinking when I'm going, yeah, okay, I'll go with you. And here's what he's thinking. With all of this I know now, I didn't know then. He has never invited a woman. He was married for 17 years. He's been divorced for 7. He's never invited a woman to this place. This is a special place. He's never liked anybody enough to invite them to this place.
Into his place, his sanctuary.
Never liked anybody enough to do this. So he's over here going, I've never wanted to bring anybody else here, but I want to bring her. And I'm over here going, motherfucker, I will run. You will not catch me. I'm faster than I look. And neither one of us knows what the other one's thinking, because this is what dating is like, right? You're really...
Yeah, initially.
You're with a stranger. You're having
this... I never thought of myself as being a mass murderer.
But you're in a beginnings of an intimate relationship with someone you really don't know. So we get in the car, and we're driving in his Honda Pilot, which he had, and we drive, and it's like 3.5 hours from where I live. And it is increasingly getting all rural up in here. And now I'm in a town I've never been in before. And he tells me, you've seen Deliverance, right? Well, it was filmed in the Tallulah Gorge, and that's a couple miles up the road. We can go hike there tomorrow if you want. And now I'm sitting here going, okay, you are going to an isolated cabin with a man who's talking about deliverance. Excellent plan.
Yeah, but at least he's planning for tomorrow. You have at least one more day.
You go, girl. Boy, you know how to live. And we pass by this business, which is a real business, and you can Google it. And it's a little tourist trap, and it's called Goats on the Roof. And here's why it's called Goats on the Roof. Because there are goats on the roof. Actual live goats on the roof.
Right.
So we drive by it, and it's this enormous, bright yellow, like, mountain chalet with all these drawbridges and rope swings and goats on the roof, walking around on the roof. And we go by it at like 55 miles an hour. And I said, hey, what was that thing called Goats on the Roof? And he goes, oh, yeah, that's like, like you can get ice cream there, and it's like a little tourist place. And I said, why is it called Goats on the Roof? And he said, well, because they have goats on the roof. And I said, like real goats or pretend goats? And he goes, no, they have real goats on the roof. And we're driving. And finally, I'm sitting there, I'm going, I may be ritualistically slaughtered. He's talking about deliverance, but I will be damned if I'm not going to go to a place that has a goat on its roof.
Do they have...
Especially if this is my last weekend on Earth.
Is there sod on the roof?
And there's all these little things. So I said to him, I hate to ask you this, and I'm just going to be really, really honest with you right now. If you don't turn this car around and take me to Goats on the Roof, I'm going to be thinking obsessively all weekend long about it.
Right.
I'm going to be wondering why there are goats on the roof, what the goats do on the roof. Can you pet the goats? It's going to just eat me alive all weekend.
That was smart that you did that.
Because that's how my brain works. Right. And so he looks at me, he goes, you want to go to Goats on the Roof? I'm like, I need to go to Goats on the Roof. So he flips on his turn signal and he whips a U-turn, and back we go to Goats on the Roof. And it was everything I hoped it would be. There was a fire pit where they had free marshmallows that you could roast. They had ice cream. They had all sorts of like tourist traps, and they had goats walking around on the roof.
How did the goats get on the roof?
They had little rope bridges and stairways and ladders, and the goats would run up on the roof, and they had goat food, and you could put a quarter in and get a handful of goat food. And he was like, I guess you're going to want to feed the goats. I definitely want to feed the goats. We're here at Goats on the Roof.
So was there sod for the goats to kind of eat?
Yeah, there was all sorts, and there were baby goats and mama goats. And so I got a handful of goat food, and the goats are like, nah, and they're eating the goat food, and it's all good. And he's over there thinking to himself, well, this is not how I thought the weekend was going to go. And I'm thinking to myself, if you're going to slaughter me tomorrow, there's no goddamn way my last thought in this world is going to be Olivia Caramia. And are there really goats on the roof? So we get back in the truck, and we drive, and we begin driving up this mountain, and it's twisty and turny, and there are all these switchbacks. And then we come to a gravel road with a homemade wooden sign nailed to a tree. And we turn down that, and we drive down the gravel, and we pull up in front of this cabin. And I surreptitiously glance at my cell phone. I have 0 bars. Well, the happy ending here is obviously he did not ritualistically slaughter me and leave my parts in the Tallulah Gorge. But that was...
That was an interesting weekend.
That was the only time I've ever gone away with someone I didn't know.
Yeah. Did you say for yourself when he went, you really want to see Goats on the Roof? Did you say, this man, who does he think he is? that goats on the roof means nothing.
No, the way he asked it to me, it was like in wonderment, because he's older than I am. He's a grown ass man, and to him, that's just, he's seen it a million times. It's a
That's
tourist
what I mean.
trap.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Like he was like, you are seriously wanting to go to goats, and you're not kidding.
I tell you that Deliverance movie, boy, they did such harm just to that part of the country.
Part of the world, and
because it's beautiful there.
We did go hiking in the Tallulah Gorge.
Yeah.
And we climbed on boulders and everything, and that was really fun. And on the last day before we packed up and went home, that's when he told me that he had never invited anybody else there.
That was nice.
And it was so sweet and romantic that I didn't have the heart to tell him that I had spent the weekend with one eye open just in case he fucking tried to slaughter me.
But you've told him that since.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the first time that he invited me to his house, I'm like texting my friends, I'm giving you my location in case Dateline needs to know where to look for the body. You think you're suspicious of pie.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a woman,
You gotta be.
I guess you have to be a little bit more. So many women are not, though.
Well, they need to be. You need to be more careful about going to isolated mountain cabins that don't have cell phone service. You need to be careful about that.
I mean, I've had women tell me stories. I mean, not women that I've been involved with, but actually a couple of them I actually was. And my jaw drops at what they have done, putting themselves in danger. Yeah.
Do you remember the caller we had on the show? You guys will remember this. She went out on a date with a guy. They went to a restaurant. They went to dinner. And then afterward, he said, let's go for a drive. And he drove out of the city limits deep into the middle of nowhere because he wanted her to show her something. And all I could think as she was telling the story, I was in a cold sweat because on Dateline, that ends with a shallow grave, right? That doesn't end with, and then you call the Bob and Sheri show and we all have a good laugh about it.
Right.
She was scared to death in that man's car.
Yeah.
And he obviously didn't mean any harm either. But sometimes men don't realize like how jumpy we are.
I mean, there's a woman I know, and she's very religious. I mean, to the point of her getting in your face about it. She wants you to know, how spiritual she is. And one of her friends was telling me, is actually a relative of hers, oh, yeah, well, let's call her Shirley. Shirley did have a couple of kind of wild moments. Yeah, like what? Well, she met this guy and went to his trailer out in the middle of nowhere at night and spent the night with the guy.
A stranger in the middle of nowhere.
In a trailer. And it worked. Obviously, it worked out okay. But she is the last person on earth that I would have said would do something like that. And what could have changed her on that one night?
Was it alcohol?
No, she didn't drink.
So it was just an impulse.
It was.
That's a dangerous impulse.
It is.
I mean, sometimes it ends with true love and you get to feed some goats out of the palm of your hands. And sometimes you never come back.
You would think somebody that was religious, if they were going to do something somewhat impulsive, that they would be, I know impulsive, but you'd think she'd be more measured about
the
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But
Yeah.
she just jumped in with both feet and off they went. And I don't think she ever saw the guy again. So it was like a one-night stand for... And she's a very nice person. I'm not, pointing the finger or tusking. But even I, as a guy, said that is the craziest ass thing that you could have done.
You always have to think about, and I know normal, healthy, mentally well, emotionally well people probably don't think about what could go wrong here. Like, let's say I decide to go home with you to your trailer in the middle of nowhere without cell phone service. What? Let's look at all the things that could conceivably go wrong here.
Well, let's say that they start to get involved romantically, but for whatever reason, she doesn't want to proceed. You could get a guy that's really pissed off.
Or they decide to hook up romantically and they're in the thick of it. And suddenly the trailer door bangs open and there's his wife and she's got a shotgun and she says, bitch, you ain't woman enough to take my man.
Yeah.
That's awkward,
Yeah.
right? That could happen.
Well, I would say awkward is a mild word to use during that. That would be, I guess, terrifying.
Alone in a dinner conversation is awkward.
Yeah. He has a point. Oh, Kathy Jean, I know this is awkward, my being topless and you having a gun.
And
But,
you know what everyone's going to say? Kathy Jean, it's not how it looks.
It's not how it looks. I have found it almost always is how it looks.
It's almost always how it looks. Yeah. Yeah. I hear that I came home and Carrie and her friend were baking in the kitchen. The kitchen looked like it had been tossed by the DEA in a drug raid. And the two of them had their whole hands in a bowl full of batter. It's not what you think, Mom. Unless y'all are cooking drugs in here, it's exactly what I think.
Yeah, you're right.
So don't go places with strangers.
Don't do it.
Don't go places with strangers.
Don't get in a capsule for 5 cents. It's going to take you to Mars.
Because it's not.
It's not taking you to Mars.
And if you drive by a place that has animals walking on its roof, turn your car around, get your ass out there and experience that, because how many times have you had that happen?
Yeah, you're right.
Not ever. It's not like it happens every
You're right.
day.
You're right. Thank you, folks, so much. Take care. We'll see you next time.
New episodes every Monday, Friday.